Right now, when it gets dark outside, you barely notice. A lamp clicks on. A screen lights up your face. The dark never really touches you. But for almost the entire length of human existence, darkness wasn't something you switched off. It was half of your life. A full, total blackness where you couldn't see your own hands, couldn't see the person standing next to you, couldn't see anything at all except whatever small flame you managed to keep alive. And in that blackness, something strange happened. Humans didn't just survive the dark. They built an entire second life inside it, one that shaped who we are more than almost anything else in our history. Let's start with the obvious problem. Before anything else, darkness was dangerous. Humans are terrible in low light. Our eyes simply aren't built for it. Meanwhile, the animals that hunted our ancestors, big cats, hyenas, wolves, could see us perfectly fine in conditions where we were nearly blind. For most of our evolutionary history, the safest move after sunset was simple. Get somewhere high, get somewhere enclosed, and don't move. Then came fire. Evidence of controlled fire use goes back roughly 1 million years, found in sites like Wonderwork Cave in South Africa. And once early humans figured out how to keep flames alive through the night, the entire rulebook changed. A fire doesn't just produce light, it produces a boundary. Predators generally won't cross into a lit space, especially one filled with smoke and unfamiliar movement. Suddenly, for the first time in millions of years of primate evolution, staying still after dark wasn't the only option. You could sit up, you could stay awake, you could exist inside the night instead of hiding from it. This sounds small. It wasn't. Before fire, a day effectively ended at sunset. Depending on the season, that gave early humans somewhere between 8 and 12 usable hours before everything simply had to stop. Fire added several more hours on top of that, hours where the body wasn't foraging, wasn't hunting, wasn't moving towards some immediate survival goal. So what filled that new unclaimed block of time? Talking. Anthropologist Polly Wiesner spent years studying the Juhansi people of the Kalahari Desert, one of the last populations on Earth still living close to a traditional hunter-gatherer lifestyle. She recorded and analyzed their daytime and nighttime conversations, and the difference was almost jarring. During daylight hours, conversation was mostly practical. Complaints, logistics, arguments about who took what, updates on where animals had been seen. Useful, necessary, but narrow. At night, everything shifted. The overwhelming majority of nighttime conversation turned into stories, myths, jokes, tales about distant relatives, distant places, ancestors who did impossible things. Wiesner's research suggests this nightly shift wasn't incidental. It may be one of the actual mechanisms through which human culture first took shape, a shared imaginative space that only opened once the pressure of daylight survival tasks was gone. Around that fire, for the first time, humans weren't just reacting to the world in front of them. They were building worlds that didn't exist yet, purely in conversation, purely in each other's heads. But conversation wasn't the only thing happening in the dark. Something even stranger was going on with sleep itself. For most of modern history, we've assumed humans are supposed to sleep in one continuous block, roughly 8 hours, start to finish. Historian Roger Eckert spent over a decade digging through old documents, court records, diaries, medical texts, even ancient literature, and found something that didn't fit that assumption at all. Hundreds of historical references, spanning centuries, described something called first sleep and second sleep. People would go to bed not long after dark, sleep for roughly 4 hours, then simply wake up. Not from disturbance, not from stress. This waking was expected, normal, built into the rhythm of the night. During that middle window, people didn't panic about being awake. They did things. They talked quietly with a partner. They thought. Some texts describe this period as an ideal time for reflection, precisely because the mind was calm and the world outside was silent. Then, after an hour or two, people simply drifted back into a second block of sleep until morning. For centuries, historians translating these old texts assumed first sleep must have meant something else, because the idea of humans sleeping in 2 separate phases seemed foreign to modern experience. The assumption ran so deep that it shaped translations for generations. Then, in the 1990s, science caught up to what the old documents had been saying all along. Psychiatrist Thomas Ware ran an experiment where volunteers spent a month without any artificial light at all, exposed instead to roughly 14 hours of natural darkness each night, the same amount our ancestors would have experienced before fire extended the evening. Within weeks, every participant, without being told to, settled into the exact same pattern the historical records described. 4 hours of sleep, a period of quiet wakefulness, then 4 more hours of sleep. Nobody taught them this. It simply reemerged like an old default setting the body had never actually forgotten. During that middle waking window, researchers measured something unusual happening hormonally. Levels of prolactin, a hormone associated with calm, meditative states, rose noticeably. Participants described the experience as peaceful, almost meditative, unlike any ordinary waking state they were used to. In other words, that quiet stretch of nighttime wakefulness wasn't a malfunction. It may have been its own distinct, functional state of consciousness, one modern humans almost never get to experience anymore. So, what happened to it? Light happened. Starting in the 1600s, cities began installing street lighting. Paris among the first, largely to reduce nighttime crime. Candles became cheaper. Gas lighting spread through the 1800s. Then in 1879, the commercial light bulb arrived, and within a single generation, the ancient rhythm of human darkness, something that had shaped our species for hundreds of thousands of years, simply dissolved. It's worth noting how seriously earlier societies once treated the boundary between day and night. The word curfew comes from the old French phrase meaning cover fire, referring to the practice of extinguishing household flames at a set hour each evening. Night wasn't just inconvenient. In many places, it was considered actively dangerous, even suspicious, a time reserved for sleep and little else. Today, we've done the opposite. Most people are exposed to several hours of artificial light after sunset, much of it now coming from screens. That light doesn't just brighten a room, it confuses the body. Your brain can't easily distinguish between a bulb and the sun, so exposure late at night delays melatonin release and quietly reshapes your sleep cycle, night after night, without you ever noticing it happening. Researchers have found that something as simple as a week of camping with zero artificial light can shift melatonin timing back by close to 2 hours, resetting the body toward the rhythm it was built for in the first place. That's how quickly hundreds of thousands of years of biological programming can reassert itself once the interference is removed. Which brings up an uncomfortable question. That quiet, reflective window between first and second sleep, the one that used to belong to almost every human on Earth, mostly doesn't exist anymore. We replaced it with something else entirely. We call it insomnia. We treat it like a problem to be fixed. But what if lying awake at 2 in the morning isn't your body breaking down? What if, every once in a while, it's simply doing exactly what it was built to do, reaching for a rhythm that existed long before light switches, long before glowing screens, back when night wasn't something to escape, but something to sit inside of, quietly, around a fire waiting for the stars?